Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the writer and creator of the Halloween Man comic series, Drew Edwards, here to promote the series Relaunch now on Global Comix. Welcome, Drew.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for reaching out and joining us here today. But outside my introduction, who is Drew Edwards in his own words?
Um, I would say I am a journeyman writer. I have been writing for comics professionally for 22 years. I'm a Ringo Award nominee for Best Writer in 2020 and 2018. I won a Best of Austin Award. I am a member of the PEN America Fellowship of Writers. I am also a Ghastly Award winner for best horror webcomic in 2009. So I guess those are my qualifications. It makes me sound very with the exception of the Ghastly Award, it makes me sound very hoity-toity. I assure you, I am not.
Well, what is the Halloween Man series about for those who aren't familiar, and what should returning readers expect when the relaunch happens?
So my elevator pitch, as it were, that I give at conventions is Halloween Man is the weird adventures of a zombie superhero and his sexy mad scientist girlfriend. They battle everything from Bigfoot, the Invisible Man, vegetarian vampires, vampire dinosaurs. It's very quirky and odd. If you like vintage monster movies, classic comic books, it's in this weird space in between Evil Dead 2 and Silver Age Fantastic Four. It doesn't sound like it should work, but somehow I've been doing this for 2 decades.
Uh-huh. Well, I remember reading one of them. I think it's one of them, the more recent ones you just re-uploaded on Global Comix, and it was about the Halloween Man and then the Necromancer, and about the burnt out Necromancer, and that just started getting the wheels turning in my head because I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, it'd be really cool if I played not a Necromancer or sorcerer or anything like that, but like a burnt out cleric. Because everybody relies on the cleric for everything. I was like, that'd be really cool if like Constitution was one of my lower stats. And I'm just like, I can't help you guys. I'm burnt out. I don't know which one to do. I thought it'd be really funny.
That's terrific. I was an avid Dungeons and Dragons player for quite a bit of time. And in fact, in the comic book, people sometimes notice Halloween Man's primary weapon is a shovel. And on the shovel, there's a pair of runes that look like +2. And that's my shout out to D&D. I'm a big fan, like most dorky kids. That was a big part of my high school experience.
Uh-huh. Well, could you elaborate a little bit more on your creative process on Halloween Man? So for instance, like character creation and development, storylines, and maybe even some world building?
Well, so Halloween Man, the character came about, initially it was from necessity, because pretty much the moment that I understood that when you pick up a comic book and there were the credits in the comic book, that was a job that you could get, I was like, well, this is my calling. Like, I love comics so much. So, I moved from my rural town in Texas to Dallas, and I immediately went about trying to find a comic book company of some sort to fall in with. And I ended up working for this guy, Malcolm Harris, who created, he was running this company, Maximum Comics and Games. And it was mostly a role-playing game. It was tabletop role-playing, like Dungeons and Dragons. And he was going to be producing a superhero game called Nemesis. And what he wanted to do to tie into everything is he wanted a comic book that was going to be based on all the different classes that you could play in the game. And he was like, well, okay, you're a horror movie guy. Would you make up the supernatural character? So I immediately started racking my brain about what I liked about, because I'm obsessed with monsters, like it's always been my thing. What I really wanted to do is kind of turn the convention of the classic monster movie on its head, where the monster was the good guy, the monster got the girl and everything. Because it seems like if you watch any one of those movies, from King Kong, Creature from the Black Lagoon, any one of those, it seems like that the monster always just wants to be loved and accepted. And at the end of the movie, some jock with a shotgun ends up killing them. And I was like, well, what if I turned out those conventions on their head? And that was the initial starting point of Halloween Man. What ended up happening is I'm a twin, and when not about 6 months into developing Halloween Man, I was unfortunately in a car accident that killed my twin, which was it was devastating. I mean, like actually, as of this recording, actually my birthday is going to be tomorrow, and it's still a really even this many decades on, like it's still a really hard day for me, because I just feel like an incomplete set. So I needed something to keep me going, and I started really putting a lot of because suddenly I felt like I had all this survivor's guilt. I really knew what it felt like to be a monster all of a sudden. And I started putting a lot of that into the comic. And I made up my twin was trans, and they were actually in they were in the point where they were transitioning from being a man into a woman. And like that was like, it felt very much like a life, like this was this person that was still very young and was just starting to figure themselves out. And so that was cut. So I even created this new character, Bella, who was basically my twin in comic book form. And so this thing suddenly became very personal. And I went to Malcolm and I was like, look, I will buy out the rights on this character and the supporting cast and everything. I have to go off and do this on my own. And it's too personal to me now. And he understood, and we parted ways amicably. And it started to evolve, like the world, since I was no longer governed by the world that Malcolm was creating, I was able to look back at when the way my twin and I grew up. We were, we both had this love of comics and monster movies and things. So we were always, collaborating with each other and telling each other's stories and things like that. So I was able to look back on some of that stuff and develop it. And in fact, the setting of Halloween Man, particular the main setting, Solar City, which is it's a fictional city, but that was based off of something that, a setting that, when we used to kick around the idea of doing our own comic books, like that was the setting that we had come up with. So, it was all this stuff that, allowed me to cope. And I apologize if I'm coming the long way around on your question, but like it's so intertwined, because if I hadn't done this comic, and if I hadn't done it in this particular way, I don't think we would be talking. I don't think I would have made it, because like this comic book saved my life.
Yeah, it's because the thing is, my next question was going to be, how do you like maintain the Halloween Man is your stories in your series and not someone else's, even with the influences of these classic horror movies and monsters, and your story of losing your twin, and this has pretty much been your coping mechanism, and it being your birthday tomorrow, and just all these really personal things, and putting it all into your work. I mean, yeah, there are some similarities or parallels in your work, but because of how personal it is and how much you've invested in there, that I think is what sets you apart from everyone else. I mean, don't get me wrong, no offense to any other comic book creators, writers, artists. I'm pretty sure they put some of their own stuff in their work as well. But you sharing your story, I mean, I don't know how often you tell people this, and I thank you for sharing that with me. But yeah, you putting your story out there and sharing it, everyone, that is what sets you apart from possibly a lot of other creators.
Well, one of the things that I have tried to do, I wasn't very open about this stuff for a long time. I am diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical anxiety. I also have dissociative identity disorder, which a lot of people, up until Moon Knight, a lot of people didn't know what that is. I guess good on Marvel. It saved me a lot of explaining to people. But I feel like I've the last few years, especially since the pandemic, I have gone out of my way to be more open about my struggles with mental health issues, because if I'm feeling this way, I know there are other people out there, and if somebody can say like, hey, this guy didn't give in, didn't let a horrible thing, a terrible thing crush him, like maybe that can help somebody else. Because and it also just, as an advocate for also the art form that is comics, like I want to show that comics can matter, and they're not just pulp fiction, but they can have real heart put into them, which, like, I think too often people think of comics as this sort of disposable medium that's for children and stuff like that. But really, especially when you get into small press, you have a lot of people that are putting their heart and souls into what they're putting out there.
Yeah. Well, to just shift a little bit, how has your experience been working with collaborators, and how did you know that they were right fit for Halloween Man? And you have a lot of experience working with collaborators, right? I'm pretty sure it's not the same people throughout, the whole 20 years. So how has that been, searching for them, and then, working with them and seeing they're the right fit, and then when they're not the right fit? So how has that experience been?
Thankfully, I've been fairly lucky with the people that I've teamed up with. Like I haven't had a whole lot of workplace drama. The few times that it's happened, I've squashed it pretty quickly. I think I'm a decent boss. Like I know I can't pay the same rate as like Marvel and DC, so I at least I try to make it a fun environment where people can collaborate, and I try to give my artists lots of leeway to interpret the characters, put their own stamp on it. There's naturally certain people that I've worked with, and there are people that I've worked with a lot of time, that after a while we have this shorthand. I can tell you this, like, this is the wrong way to approach somebody. So a few years ago, I was doing an art search, and the girlfriend character in Halloween Man, Lucy, she's a plus size woman, which is of course a rarity in mainstream comics. And I had put out some ads for artists, and I had a guy email me, and he had sent me all of his interpretations of the characters. His art was quite good, but his Lucy was very, very off model. And I made mention of that, and he's like, well, I'm not going to draw the character that way. Like the way you have this character in your head, it's wrong. She needs to look this way. And I was like, well, thanks for talking to you, good luck finding a gig, but this is gonna not work for you, or we're not going to be able to collaborate. Because
Mhm.
so like if you don't come in with like good faith, but also a little bit of humility that, like, you're going to be able to interpret the character and be able to put your stamp on it, but don't come in telling me, well, we're doing this my way, like, especially on something like this with the character that's, you know, it's not the norm. Like, it's good that the representation is there. So, like the fact that he was kind of coming at me like that, it was a bit on the arrogant side, I suppose. So, that's really thankfully one of the few times I've had to deal with anything like that. Like, most of the artists that I've worked with have been lovely people that love comics, and they just want to put out the best comic possible.
Yeah, that's just like, I mean, I get, because I've heard of when I speak with other writers and how the artists have interpreted their work, and a lot of times it can come out kind of better than what they imagine it to be, which is great. But for you, for not for you, but for that particular artist to just like reinterpret that character as being one of the main characters, and then saying that, I guess they were just trying to say like that Lucy is not attractive at this size, or
Yeah.
that's not what they
Oh no,
imagined to
that's
be. It's like,
that's literally what he said.
oh,
Like,
okay.
I was kind of soft pedaling it, I guess, because I'm too nice and I didn't want to make him seem too rude. But he used some not some nice words about, I won't draw a woman that's expletive, and yeah, that doesn't fly with me.
Yeah, just that's just terrible. But what advice would you offer to other creators that you wish someone would have told you when you first started, or even during the process, I guess maybe like even the early stages of Halloween Man?
That don't get caught up in the idea of overnight success, that comics are a long game. I did not get any real recognition at this until I was in my mid 30s. Like, I started developing Halloween Man when I was fresh out of high school. And, now I'm in my 40s and I'm still doing it. And, I thought I had all these visions of how my life was going to go and how my career was going to go. And I would have been a whole lot happier and a whole lot less critical of myself if I could go back and talk to my younger self and go, just don't give up on your expectations, and let things be, let your career evolve the way it's going to evolve. Because, like, if you think you're gonna, I mean, some people do. Like, one of my regular collaborators is Nicola Scott, who, her career took off like a rocket, and she was working for DC within a few years of really, getting out there. But that doesn't happen to most people. Most people really have to stick it out to get their lion's share of the industry. And comics are incredibly competitive. Basically everybody who is a fan of comics at one point, I think, has thought about making their own comics. So um I would definitely tell myself to adjust my expectations, and you know just be happy with like, stop, breathe, take a look around, see, and take in the experience, because you don't get those moments back.
Yeah. So throughout the whole process, so just like Halloween Man, like you got this in the back, like it's good. You're good with the characters, you're good with your artists and collaborators, you're good with your deadlines that you've handled. But like outside of this, it's like family life and friends and trying to maintain a social life and even time for yourself, with everything that's happened in your life. Like, how do you manage your mental well-being when it becomes too overwhelming, when it becomes too much, or even if you've ever dealt with burnout, right? So how do you typically manage when it does become like that?
Most of the time I have to, you know set up good boundaries, and if I need some alone time, just be like, because I think if you were to ask people, they would tell you that I am a social butterfly and that I have all this energy and everything. But the thing is, there's a part of me that's very introverted and I need time to myself. So like, I have to be able to be like, not today, I can't do it today. I can't hang out today. I need to take some alone time for me, and just make sure people know that it's not personal. I mean, there's definitely times where it's been too much. Like when I was divorced, I was going through a divorce with my first wife, and it wasn't like a great breakup. Not that there's such a thing as a good breakup, but it was a particularly difficult breakup. There was a point where I attempted suicide, and I was in a mental institution very briefly, and I didn't work on comics for probably 6 months when I got out of the hospital, because I didn't have it in me. So I'm not going to say that like I've been perfect every time, like just being able to like barrel on through, because that's certainly not the case. But overall, like you have to be aware that you're burning out. Like you have to be aware that you're taking on too much, and you have to have the ability to say no, which I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. I certainly do. I've taken on freelance gigs that I probably shouldn't have, because you never know when the opportunity is going to arise again. And like, there was a job I took last year that my wife actually was like, you shouldn't take this. You have too much going on right now. And I look back on it and she was right. So like, the ability to say no is very empowering.
Yeah, I know I mentioned to you earlier before we got started about how I'm like going pretty much on hiatus from these interviews in like a couple of weeks. And I'm like, the cutoff date is the October 1st, but I'm ending them totally like pretty much at the end of the month of October. And I like had to pretty much put it out there and say it out loud. So because the thing is with creators is they're gonna continue to inbox me and want to come on the show, and it's getting to the point now where I'm forgetting stuff, and like I don't know what day it is, or I'm just so exhausted mentally from everything. Like I love speaking with everyone and talking about their projects and whatnot and networking with people, but it's gotten to the point now where it's like draining me in a way. Like I know the previous weekend, or last weekend I should say, I was planning on going out to some different events and like to a person's I should say my cousin's birthday party, and I just couldn't do it. Like the idea of getting up and like getting back in my car and being around other people, it was just exhausting just thinking about it. So it's like actually doing it would probably have been worse. And then like I'm not sleeping either, so I need just that for me is learning how to say no has become a difficult task, because I'm not used to having opportunities. Like you said, you never know, the opportunity may arise from something that you took on, but it's like I'm not used to having them, so I'm trying to take on as much as I can, but it's like you're no good to anybody if you're exhausted, if you're sleep on your feet, right? So that's pretty much where I am right now, and just trying to tell myself that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to go on hiatus, pretty much.
And I've definitely been in a place that like what you're describing, and the people that really care, like they will understand. And you have to be aware that when you start to take a long hard look, like the people who care, like you keep them in your life, but the people who don't understand, those aren't the people you need in your life anyway. And no opportunity is worth your health. I think as in America, we are taught to basically work ourselves to death. And like, if you ever talk to anybody from another country, they think we're insane how much we work.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to pace yourself, because life isn't it's what is the right word? It's a jog, not a marathon. I think I'm phrasing this wrong. But
it's a what is it? A marathon, not a sprint or something like that?
That's it right there.
Okay. But my last question for you, Drew, is, and you kind of touched on it already, but what is your idea of success, right? So I asked that because as creators, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue from our art, we're considered failures, or we'll consider ourselves failures. Many of us will put our dreams and projects on the back burner or give them up altogether because this career path can be highly intimidating and competitive. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
The most important thing to me, I mean, naturally, look, money's great. I've won some awards. Those are nice. I'm not going to say good reviews make me happy. Bad reviews make me sad, like all those things. But my most important thing is to know that my work is out there. It's being read, and that, it affects people in the way that I want them to, that they laughed at the jokes. They thought they were funny when it was supposed to be sad, that they were touched. That's what means the most to me, because a story's no good if it's just, for me, like we humans, they create stories to share them with other people. So, I just want my stuff to be read by as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything else that you want to touch on about Halloween Man as a whole that I may have missed?
Well, we touched on it briefly at the start, but we are relaunching through Global Comix, and we're over in the course, and by the time this interview is out, it'll all be up there, but my entire back catalog is going up there for free, and it's including stuff that was never on Comixology. So this is going to be the complete Halloween Man reading experience. So if you want to try this comic out, if you have enjoyed this conversation at all, please go to Global Comix. That's Global Comix with an X. Look up Halloween Man comics and dig into it, because it's a whole other universe of comics that people probably aren't aware of.
Yeah, and expect a lot. It's 22 years worth of material. So
you might be reading for a while.
For a while, yeah. All right. Well, again, I want to thank the writer and creator of the Halloween Man comic series, Drew Edwards, for joining us here today to promote the series Relaunch, now on Global Comix. I highly recommend our listeners to give Halloween Man a look, share, and read pretty much all of the back catalog if they are interested in. All of Drew's socials, website, and the Global Comix profile will be listed in this episode's details for those who are interested in reading. Again, I am KS Garner, and you've been listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Thank you.